Good morning. Today I am delighted to share the cover of my coming book, The Last War, with the viewers. Since this book is still about 7 weeks away before coming in the market, and I believe it will be the first book of its kind, especially in the subcontinent, I intend to do a series of videos before the book comes in the market to explain what the book is about, why I have written that, and how I am qualified to write a book like this. Since the book is about artificial intelligence, let me start by explaining in simple terms what is this. Artificial intelligence is about simulating human intelligence in machines and robots. And this is done in 3 steps. The first step is learn. The machine or the robot is made to learn. Once it has learned, then it develops the capability to self-correct or self-adapt. And thereafter, in most cases, it is able to generate an output which is accurate, which is faster, which is superior, and totally unmatched by human beings. In other words, logically speaking, the more intelligent a machine or a robot becomes, the more autonomy it will have. So I have discussed in this book 2 subjects. One is I have looked at artificial intelligence as it affects the global geopolitics. In this, I have compared 2 security architecture which will determine the outcome of where this century the world will go. One architecture is led by China, fully supported by Russia, and this is called the Asia Pacific Security Architecture. This has as its fulcrum the Belt and Road Initiative, which I believe is a evolving, dynamic, little understood, underplayed, maligned concept. Why I say that is because while the BRI was unveiled by General Secretary Xi Jinping in 2013, a component of the BRI, which is called the Digital Silk Road, was incorporated in the documents, in the Chinese documents in 2015, and it was first spoken of in 2017 by Xi Jinping. And this Digital Silk Road, about which very little is understood, is what can really affect the geopolitics, because it offers prosperity by ushering in the third and the fourth industrial revolutions concurrently to the nations, BRI nations, something like 135 nations, which are on board this concept, this architecture. As we know, the third industrial revolution is about mobile connectivity and the fourth is about digital connectivity. Pakistan's CPEC, which is the flagship of the BRI, actually has that potential to really bring prosperity to their own people, provided they can get their politics correct and they can bring stability there. But this is not the subject for discussion right now. The other competing architecture is the traditional one, which is led by America, and this is called, it was renamed in May 2018 when the Trump administration was in office, as the Indo-Pacific Security Architecture. Sadly, this does not offer prosperity, and it is all about hard power, military power, about deterrence. So, it stands logically that for any nation in the Asia Pacific region, here is one nation which is offering both prosperity as well as cooperative security, and the other nation which is offering only deterrence, hard power, security. Which one it will choose? Because after all, for any nation, its prosperity and security cannot be divisible. You cannot ask a nation that, look, you get your prosperity from China and you get your security from America. In other words, even if the Biden administration has some ideas about bringing in the economic element into their Indo-Pacific strategy, I don't think they will be able to compete with the DSR. In any case, the DSR is way ahead and there is a lot of time lag, but this is something we will see how these 2 architectures they come up in the next 10 years, but this is not the subject, the main subject of my book. The bulk of my book, or the focus of my book, is on artificial intelligence at war. This is where the bulk of the book is. And if you see the cover of the book, anybody would say that, hey, this is a overkill. The guy has shown a Terminator. This is alarmist. This is dramatic. This is into the future. Of course, the Terminator is well into the future, because Terminator, when we talk of, we are talking about a robot which has artificial general intelligence inserted in it. And artificial general intelligence is into the future. I mean, to begin with, competition is going on between China and America. One of the key things that they are working on are the quantum computers, which the experts say will be critical to go anywhere close to the artificial general intelligence. But what I have depicted here on my cover, and I am delighted that the designer got it correct, is artificial narrow intelligence. Again, the robot is the same. So it can either have, it could have in the future artificial general intelligence. It has today, now, artificial narrow intelligence, and there's a big difference in the two. Today, the competition between the PLA and the US military is on artificial narrow intelligence. And the three big differences in the two are: artificial narrow intelligence, it lacks contextualization, it does not have abstraction, and it does not have cognitive capabilities. Now, contextualization means that while the robot will give, robot with ANI, narrow intelligence inserted in it, will give superior result, but it will not be able to explain why it gave this result. In other words, the reliability factor will always be there, how much reliable the output is. And this unreliability obviously will not be acceptable to any nation in warfare, because things can go horribly wrong. But I have explained in my book that the PLA has eliminated, if pitted against Indian military, it has eliminated this problem of contextualization altogether. This is what has been explained. Now, the second problem is abstraction. Abstraction means that today, with artificial narrow intelligence, a robot or a machine can only deliver in one domain. It can only do one specific role. It can only be trained for one application. And it does not have the ability to use the training of that application for another application. For example, a human being, when I see a cat, I identify a cat with certain characteristics. If I see another animal with the same characteristics, I'll say, all right, this is from the same family. So I can relate one domain to another domain, which a robot or a machine with ANI will not be able to do. And the third, of course, is cognition. Cognition is about reasoning, is about intuition. It is about the higher faculties, intellectual faculties, which a robot lacks. In other words, let's say, as an example, that if I am standing by the road and I am trying to cross the road and there's a car coming, I'll instinctively, by a reflex action, I'll stop and let the car pass. This is something a robot with the ANI in it will not do. It will keep going there because it has been only trained for this particular task and it does not have the cognitive capabilities. But what this means is, ANI, I have explained here that despite these three shortcomings, major shortcomings, how the PLA has been able to overcome these handicaps and why and how it is preparing for a war which will be the first of its kind that the world will see. I have explained how now they have, or they would have already accomplished, or they are about to accomplish what is called the autonomy at rest. Autonomy at rest basically refers to the artificial narrow intelligence inserted in the software for applications which are intangible, like decision making. So when you insert ANI for decision making application, it is called autonomy at rest, What happens with this is that the kill chain, you can close the kill chain faster, or the OODA loop, which is your observe, orient, decide and act loop, you quicken or you hasten that OODA loop. So you have an advantage over your enemy or the adversary by this. So this is autonomy at rest. The other is autonomy in motion, which is about robots. As I have already said, it will be very difficult for an enemy to know. I mean, if they are competitors, let's say like America, US military and the PLA, they will not know as to at what stage of capability does a particular robo has. Anywhere between artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence, what sort of capability is inserted in this. This of course problem PLA will not have with the Indian military, which again has been explained in the book. Now, I can draw straight away 3 observations from this. My first observation is that in a software driven war, where it is difficult to say whether this is ANI or it is AGI, arms control or traditional arms control treaties are impossible, they will not work. My second observation is that the gestation period of software driven capabilities or platforms, it will be much faster. For example, a tank. In any developed country, I'm not talking of Arjun tank which has taken gestation of something like decades. In a developed country, from the stage of conceptualization to operationalization, it could take anything up to 8 years, 6 to 8 years. But here in the software driven war, you will not know 6 months back what was the capability of this robo and today what is the capability. In other words, we are transiting from the concept of platforms to the concept of capabilities, and this is what I have explained in my book. And therefore we have to be prepared for operational surprises. And my third observation is that because these are software driven capabilities, they'll be without a human being there, unmanned systems, robots, they'll be cheaper, they'll be risk averse, they'll be lethal, they'll have both quantity and quality. So this is the war that I have explained and I have depicted in this book, with both autonomy at rest and autonomy in motion accomplished by the PLA. So in my opinion, the PLA is well set in case of a war. I am not saying that there will be a war. In case of a war of the PLA with the Indian military, to get the first mover advantage in the new age war. And this is a very big thing against its competitor, the US military. Let me give you an example. The first Gulf War, which was fought by the US military, Operation Desert Storm, under the leadership of General Norman Schwarzkopf against Iraq, that produced shock and awe in the world, and the militaries of the world, they were dazzled by something new which had been shown. And what was shown was the US military's battle networks, which had connected all their sensors and shooters and the defense services, and which were imperfect. Moreover, the guided munition which they used, or the smart munition which they used with help from the space capabilities, they were very limited. Just about 8 to 10% of the total ordnance that they threw on Iraq. And the rest were all dumb bombs. But for so many years, the world was dazzled. PLA especially took keen notice of it because already the US military had a first mover advantage. So, PLA is now at that cusp of getting a first mover advantage in a war which will be backed by artificial intelligence, emerging technologies and innovative war concept, how the war is to be fought. This is all that I have discussed in the book. Now, it is equally important, I thought, for the viewer to know who exactly am I and how am I qualified to even write a book like this. So, this book has been 6 years in the writing, 6 years of research, 6 years of meeting people, I was very fortunate to meet with the PLA officers in China as well as some American top experts. And this 6 years of reflection and writing. And this is backed by 42 years of my passion for understanding the Chinese military. It started way back in 1979 when, as a captain in the Indian Artillery, I was posted in Kemeng district of Arunachal Pradesh, which is the border with China. So after I took my and that is when I could visit all the places in the eastern sector, most of them where our soldiers fought valiant battles and they were lost. So after I took premature retirement from the Army, Indian Army, my first book I wrote in year 2000, which is the Defense Makeover, 10 Myths That Shape India's Image. And I made two simple points there. I said in 2000 that look, border management, excellent border management of the PLA is your immediate military threat. Because I had noticed that subsequent to our 1998 nuclear tests, where the Vajpayee government publicly blamed China as the reason for conducting the tests, the transgressions and the intrusions on the line of actual control, they increased. So this was the threat. Now we are looking at the threat of border management of the PLA 22 years later today. Today all this talk which is going on of building infrastructure, and we have our Army Chief General Pandey and before that his predecessor Naravne Rawat going and explaining that look, great things are happening on infrastructure, this road is being built. You see, this should have happened 22 years back. So as a consequence of this, while we are doing this, the war has advanced. This is what I have explained here, that you are basically preparing for border management which is not the present war that the PLA will fight, because they were not sitting on their haunches for 22 years. They were competing with the US military. All the details are there in this. And the second observation I made was that look, China will not resolve the border with dispute with India, and hence the seeds of a future war between India and China, they lay in the eastern sector, which is Arunachal Pradesh, and this is precisely where the two militaries are in a standoff position. When I wrote the next book, which was it came out in January 27, co-authored with my colleague Ghazala Wahab, called The Dragon on Our Doorstep, again 2 points were made. My opening point of the book was that let alone China, India cannot even compete with Pakistan. And today what we are doing with China is, which I have explained in details in this book, there are two narratives at work. There is one narrative which is the truth, which is at work in India dealing with China. And the second narrative is what the American or during the Trump administration they used to call the alternate truth, which is for the domestic consumption. Now, how long can this balancing act be done? Nobody knows about it. And the second observation made was that look, in January 2017, it was written that look, the immediate threat is to Ladakh, and that prediction has come true. Precisely this has happened in April of 2020. Now, this is not all. I have been very fortunate that the PLA invited me for their Shakshanshi forum in 2017, in 2018, in 2019. Now, Shakshanshi forum is PLA led, roughly comparable to Shangri-La dialogue we'll very soon be having in Singapore, which will be talking about Indo-Pacific security and stability. So this one, the Shakshanshi forum, this also they get the military experts from across the world, and they get the defense minister, they get very high profile people who are interested in national security studies, and they have been talking about also the security and stability, how to bring that in the Asia Pacific security architecture. So I was fortunate to attend these, and the 2018 session of the Shangxi Forum fortunately devoted a full session on artificial intelligence in war, and in 2019 they invited me to speak also on a session where I spoke on artificial intelligence in war and exactly what is the future. It must have gone very well with the PLA, because within weeks of my coming back home, I got a mail from the Shangxi Forum Secretariat asking me in 2020 forum what topic I would like to speak on related to emerging technologies and artificial intelligence. Of course, it did not work out because COVID happened and we had the problem in Ladakh. This is just to make the point that during these interactions, I had that great opportunity to talk directly, informally with so many PLA officers of various rank, and I think those inputs were absolutely valuable, and I have made it a point not to quote where they did not want to be quoted in the book. Then I was also fortunate to have been invited in 2018 to their Academy of Military Sciences, the PLA's academy. Now this academy has evolved from what it was before 2015 reforms. It had just about 1000 officers. When I went there in 2018, they told me today we have something like 10,000 PLA officers. What they have done is they have brought the technology expert and the expert on war concepts. That means the science of war, the art of war has been brought together under one head. And they interact very deeply and regularly with the academia and the industry. And this is what civil military fusion, which the Americans worry that the China has developed, is all about. So I was fortunate to also visit and interact with them at the Academy of Military Sciences. Now, last but not the least, this book, I have been very lucky, who I consider my teacher, one of the, what I consider is the top American expert on artificial intelligence application in war. He has peer reviewed my manuscript, and he has said that I found your description of future war to be very good, and I found your the scenario that you have built up, a war scenario, to be far more accurate and believable than other contemporary scenarios that have been written by various people. And of course, I have thanked them profusely in my book. So this was basically the preliminary video. In my next video, I'll be talking about the principles which are there behind the PLA's war, the principles behind PLA's information war, informatized war and intelligencized war. But this is for the next video. But I can assure you that this book gives a very logical, with great clarity, all these things that I have spoken about. Thank you so much.